everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all keeping well. And welcome to a standalone episode looking at how best to secure a pupillage for those who wish to become a barrister, and some overview of the process and some top tips. Just a reminder, pupillage is the year-long practical training following your barrister course. And we did look at the routes to entry into law to becoming a barrister on another video, so do recommend you look back on the channel for that. And we're going to look at the top tips and some different strategies for you to secure a pupillage today. Thank you everyone who has liked and subscribed so far. We do try to keep the channel a bit of a mix, primarily on educating legal education for those who are doing legal training or studying the law, but also simplifying areas of law for the general public. So this may not potentially be relevant for you, but if you are interested in becoming a barrister in the future, or just want an idea about the pupillage process and the application process in particular, then please do watch. So pupillage is the final stage of becoming a barrister, the point where all your academic knowledge and advocacy skills are tested in real practice. It's supervised, mentored and structured, and the Pupillage Gateway is the centralized online system where most chambers advertise and receive applications. It doesn't cover every set, some recruit directly, but the majority use it. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the actual website in this video. We'll have a few screenshots and talk through the functionality of this software. But as I said, not every chambers uses this, and some private chambers do have their own dedicated application process on their website. So do research the chambers that you're interested in and see if they're actually on the gateway. Think of the gateway as your hub. So it's one profile, up to 20 applications, and one strict deadline window each year. It's a system that filters thousands of aspiring barristers down to the next generation of pupils. It's important to know also that the Crown Prosecution Service, the legal trainee scheme, is actually not on the gateway, the Pupillage Gateway, and we're going to touch upon this in this video. So I was fortunate to secure pupillage offer via the CPS, and this is a separate application process, and we're going to delve deeper and look at my application, some of the notes that I made during this video. But in terms of the gateway, understanding the platform and how chambers use it gives you a huge advantage before you even think about applying. So let's look at that and when and how to use it effectively. The Pupillage Gateway runs on a fixed annual timetable. Applications typically open in January and close about a month later, often in early February. At the time of filming, we're in December 2025, so this is only relevant as of today. It could change in future years, but the Gateway website is actually open now for you to view applications, and we will have a look at that in this episode, but they don't actually go live until later on. Adverts usually go live in late November or early December. That means your preparation has to start before Christmas during this period if you want to be successful. You need time to research chambers, understand their practice areas, their recent cases, their ethos, whether you are actually suited to their work. So start drafting your CV, reviewing your advocacy examples, and choosing referees well in advance. I remember you get up to 20 gateway applications, but you can also apply to additional sets that recruit outside the gateway, as we've already pointed out. That means potentially more than 20 opportunities if you plan well. But just remember, quantity is not always as important as quality. So I know some people who applied just for a number of sets and managed to get offers through all of them, and they put a lot of time and effort into those applications, whereas on the other side of the scale, some people just copied and pasted similar applications to multiple chambers, and they often were met with rejections, as the chambers can actually see through these copied and pasted applications. It's not to say that it's not hard. This is very hard to get a pupillage, and the stats are against you to some degree. Hundreds of people applying for each chambers, and often the chambers have 2 to 3 pupillages on average per year. The larger chambers do have more, and some smaller chambers only have 1. Whereas the CPS, the year that I applied, had 75, but we'll go into a little bit more detail later on. But preparation is everything. The gateway is not something you fill in the night before. It's something you build towards. And just got a few screenshots here. So this is the actual website. You can see you'll need to register and create a username and password. And you need to do this well before the time. So during the autumn, coming into December, you'll need to make sure you're registered for this with your details. And you can see some of I don't know if it's easy to see on your screen, but there's some key timetable here. This is for the December 2025, January to January 2026 process. You can see here the key dates here. Late November, applicants can start to view adverts, may access the Pupillage Gateway to browse the vacancies, and then this is the key window here. You can start applying on the 5th of January 2026. But in order to do that, you need to prep before this. So it's important to view all this and start your preparation well into December and even late November, if possible. And complete the applications late January. And then this is where the interview period starts, January, February, all the way up to the periods where in May 2026, there'll be offers made. There's a generalized offer date where the majority of chambers release their decisions on this particular date. And this is generally in May 2026. And in terms of the interview process, often there's a number of interviews, so 2, 3, 4 interviews even. It's just demonstrating how competitive it can be. And you can see once you're logged into the gateway, you've got hundreds of chambers here. You can just browse. If you go to the pupillage vacancies tab here and search for pupillages, you can actually see all of them. You can actually filter them according to your requirements here. So whether that's different areas of the country, you'll often see that the pupillage awards, how much you get paid, is often higher in London. And you can filter that. However, they are generally more competitive. If you do not have an issue with traveling or relocating for a year, that may be a better option to secure a pupillage in the hard to reach areas, potentially. However, they often have less pupillages in those less populated areas, so it can be a bit harder. So it's important to look at all of the stats and sit down and look at strategy where you want to apply, whether that's geographically or even the type of pupillage, so whether that's crime or civil, or even the start dates. So you can see here some of them. For the 2026 application, you've got some starting on the same year, so that's 2026, whereas some are a year in advance. That's October 2027, you can see here. Often majority pupillages start around about September, October time. But you can see here this other chambers has started in June. Well, theirs is a little bit earlier in June. But often they coincide with people who are studying the bar course. You can actually apply before you've completed the bar course, but generally if you finish your exams in the summer, you need to be called to the bar within a set period of time, and majority of people get called in July. So hence you don't often see pupillages starting this early, just to accommodate people who are still studying. And you can see here, I'll just go back to the previous slide actually. You see this little heart here. The ones that tickle your fancy, if you're interested in any of them, you can actually put this on what's called a watch list. So if you click on this heart, you can save the ones that you're most interested in or you feel as though are most relevant. You can always come back to this later on, and you can have a watch list of say 20 or 30 different sets, so you don't have to scroll through all of the hundreds or dozens of chambers to find it. You can see here some of the typical application questions. Why do you believe you'll make a good barrister? These are often fairly common. What relevant experience you have? Why do you want to join the chambers in particular? So they can see through any copy and pasted applications. You do really need to research the chambers in detail, look at their website, look at their advert as to what type of pupils they're looking for, what areas of practice are you interested in and why. So if you're applying for a criminal pupillage and you've put in your application that you've got so much experience in family law or you're interested in family law, then there'll be a straight application into the bin. And also, the different chambers and different sets have got various other additional questions. So there's normally a set number of consistent questions that most chambers ask, and then they'll look for some individual questions and even some exercises also that they wish you to do. So what do chambers actually look for in the application? We saw a glimpse there of some of it's just a brief set of questions. So firstly, they look at strong academics. So while grades aren't everything, they are one of the simplest indicators chambers use in the early sifting process. Secondly, advocacy potential. So any relevant experience, so mooting, debating, mini pupillages, volunteering in legal clinics, written advocacy. These are all ways to demonstrate you have the core skills of a barrister. The third, a commitment to the bar. So chambers want to see evidence that you've explored this career properly. Shadowing, attending court, speaking to barristers, reading cases, following the criminal and civil courts news. So what I actually did was a scheme, it's called a marshalling scheme, which was arranged through my inn, Gray's Inn. And this is where you sit with a judge for a day and just observe how the judge deals with cases. And this was in the Crown Court, Birmingham Crown Court. And when I got back to chambers, I sat in with the judge during lunch and at the end of the day, just discussing the case. And the judge actually was very engaged in the process and asked me a lot of questions as to how I would tackle the case as an advocate and whether I agreed with the advocacy styles and what style I would bring forward if I were in practice. So that's very good experience to put in to the applications. Also, do you fit in with the set? So this is often underestimated. Chambers want people who understand their practice areas, whether that's crime, commercial, family, employment, public law, or something more niche. And a tailored application shows that you respect their work and have chosen them deliberately, not because you're sending out 50 generic forms. So let's talk strategy now. We did touch upon this. So tip 1, personalize everything. Chambers see dozens of copy and paste applications. If your answers could apply to any set in England and Wales, you're doing it wrong, and they can normally see through this straight away. Next tip, gain relevant experience. We've already touched upon that. So mini pupillages, moots, volunteering, pro bono, pre-representation units, things like this. Court shadowing, these build credibility and show that you've got an interest in applying this interest into practical experience. Tip 3, you'll come across this in a number of the different application processes for all of the sets and even the Crown Prosecution Service as well. Something called the STAR method. And this is giving examples to the experience. So situation, task, action, result. So be specific. Chambers care more about insight than volume. So what did you learn from the experience? Don't just say, I did some marshalling in the Crown Court. What did you learn from that? What will you take forward? How will that affect your future practice? The next tip, so research. Know the chamber's specialisms, recent cases, notable members, and its reputation. This demonstrates respect and professionalism. Doing these 4 things consistently will take your application form from average to compelling and hopefully stand out from all the other copied and pasted applications. So now that we've covered the Chambers route, let's turn to an alternative that leads to the same professional destination. That's the CPS legal trainee scheme. And the reason I'm doing this is part of the strategy. So I did mention that out of all the applications I did secure a pupillage offer with the Crown Prosecution Service. And we talked about strategy earlier. So often there's only 2 or 3 pupillages and hundreds of people are applying for these. And it does seem extremely competitive. Whereas when I applied for the CPS scheme, it's a nationwide scheme, and there's a lot more people who potentially are applying. However, there were 75 places, and this included both trainee solicitors and trainee barristers. So for me, I applied for this, also because I've got an interest in criminal law, but also mainly due to strategy as well. That was a key element to it, and improving your odds of success. And as I said, it's not easy to get a pupillage. I mean, I did the part-time bar course over 2 years, and I speculatively applied in the first year and got some interviews but failed. And then I was successful in the second year of applying. So experience counts, but also strategy is very key. So in this next section, we're focusing specifically on the CPS legal trainee scheme. So one of the most stable, structured and hands-on routes to becoming a practicing barrister. And unlike Chambers, where competition is fierce and opportunities are limited, CPS scheme invests heavily in training new prosecutors, gives you an employed pupil barrister role with guaranteed career progression if you do pass and succeed in demonstrating the required characteristics and behaviours. So over the next few slides, we'll walk through everything you need to know. So eligibility, what they look for, how to apply, and how to stand out. So the CPS legal trainee scheme is the employed bar. So it's the employed pupillage route for those who want to practice criminal law as prosecutors. And you're taken on as a trainee or pupil barrister, paid a salary, supervised and trained. Your work involves case preparation, evidence review, charging decisions, and developing courtroom advocacy. So there's a mix of different skills involved in this. It's not just courtroom work. There's a lot of drafting, and these are important things to know when you do apply and attend interviews, just to demonstrate the knowledge of the role. So it's important to know what the role is before you apply for the role. The key advantage, some people say, is job security. So if you're not aware already, the majority of barrister positions are in the private bar. So you're actually self-employed and you work through a chambers, but this is effectively a hired office. You've got clerks who oversee your cases, but essentially you're self-employed and your income could fluctuate depending on how many cases you take on. Whereas the employed bar, it's a fixed salary and you get a paycheck every month and you get annual leave and pension. And for some people, that's the key advantage. So once you complete your training successfully, also the CPS guarantees you a Crown Prosecutor post. So if you do put the effort into getting in and demonstrating that you are fit for the role, then there are definite benefits for job security thereafter. Just go back to this slide. I don't think we discussed this too much, but essentially the window is similar. It's not on the Pupillage Gateway, but it's still January 2026, and you've got your interviews and assessments thereafter. You do get structured development, real advocacy experience, and a clear career path with the CPS. So for many aspiring criminal barristers, this is the ideal environment. But why choose the CPS route or the legal trainee scheme over chambers. So what I would say is I wouldn't necessarily put it over other chambers, but have a mix of applications. So there's nothing stopping you from applying for criminal sets on the gateway alongside the CPS, and you'd be actually quite foolish just to narrow your choices just to one application. But the first thing is that one of the benefits is structure. So you're trained, mentored, and reviewed consistently. Secondly, the advocacy. So CPS trainees get early and frequent court exposure in both magistrates and Crown courts. Thirdly, the service. So being a prosecutor is a public service role, so protecting the public, supporting victims and witnesses, and ensuring fairness. So if you want meaningful work, variety, and stability, the CPS route is an exceptional choice for you. So to apply, you need a qualifying law degree or conversion course. So this is the LLB, or in my case, I did the PGDL, postgraduate diploma in law, which is following a previous degree in another subject. You need to have completed the bar course or nearing completion, and also demonstrate an interest in criminal justice and public service. But beyond the formal requirements, you need to show responsibility, fairness, and maturity, and prosecutors handle real-life consequences. So the CPS wants people who understand the weight of that responsibility. And what does the CPS look for? So the CPS evaluates applicants on a few key strengths: so analytical decision-making, advocacy potential, resilience under pressure, and clear, structured communication. And this is all quite evident in the tests that they ask you to complete during the process, and we'll have a look at that later in the video. But you need to use examples that show judgment, fairness, composure, and the ability to adapt. These are the qualities of a good prosecutor. So what does the application process look like then? So it does have several stages. So there's an online application form and some competency questions. So this is just a basic first step. You just need to put that you've got the required previous degree and you're working towards the bar course or completed it. But then you've got the online tests, and these are situational judgment tests. So this is one of these stumbling blocks for many people, and they don't know how to approach these tests. So often these are fair. There's two, if I remember from experience, there's two separate tests that you need to do within timed conditions. And these test your reaction as to how you would react as a CPS or government employee in various situations. And often they're looking for the best response. So sometimes the best answer. So sometimes the correct response is one of many good responses, and they're looking for the most appropriate answer. And then there's also a video interview, or a number of video interviews actually. So the first video interview is where you're sitting on your own, you don't know the questions that come up, and you get a specific number of seconds to view the question, and then you've got about 30 seconds or to a minute, if I remember, up to 2 minutes to record an answer. So this is thinking on the spot. However, preparation is key here. And we are going to look at some of the notes that I made during my interview later on in this episode. And then there's an assessment center. So this is the second interview. And I actually did that through video also soon after COVID. It potentially could move back to physical interviews, but essentially you're given a question a week before on an area, you're given a topic, of an area of law a week before to research, and then you need to attend an assessment center. And at this assessment center, they release or reveal the question on that particular area of law. So hopefully you would have done your research, and then you've got, I believe it's about half an hour I had to prepare a written response to the question, and then also a very short presentation, so it is quite challenging. You need to think on the spot, but again, preparation is key. If you know your area of law inside out that you've been asked to research, then you'll do well. And then you move on to the panel interview. So there's a number of CPS staff, often a prosecutor, someone from HR, and another colleague who rotate and ask questions based on the behaviors, which we'll look at also. Each stage tests skills directly linked to prosecution work, so decision making, judgment, communication, and professionalism. So key here is to prepare thoroughly. So tip one of the many tips that we're discussing on this video. So show a genuine interest in prosecution. So obviously it's natural to be desperate just to get a pupillage, but you do need to have some sort of interest in the post that you're applying for. This is one of the biggest differentiators. To show that prosecution isn't just a backup plan. Demonstrate genuine exposure to criminal law, court visits, volunteering, victim support, pro bono, or mini pupillages. Explain why prosecution specifically appeals to you. So focus on fairness, justice, things like this, victims, witnesses, public service. A number of things you can discuss. Obviously, that's individual to you, and just have some time to reflect on how you're best going to demonstrate this. Another tip is your advocacy experience. So advocacy is central to prosecution. So show your experience, moots, mini pupillages, any other work, freedom representation units, things like this, written advocacy, or anything where you've analysed facts and presented arguments. It doesn't have to be legal based, but anything that demonstrates these qualities would be beneficial. Just don't overlook these experiences and get into things like moots and competitions and debating contests, things like this. Reflection matters more than volume. Again, quality over quantity. Show what you've learned and how you apply the feedback. So tip 3, demonstrate resilience in handling pressure. It is going to be a pressurized job, so the CPS demands resilience, whether that's emotional, intellectual, or practical. Use concrete examples where you've handled pressure, managed conflict, or adapted quickly. Explain what you've learned and how you improved. Resilience is not about never struggling. It's about staying fair, calm, and professional despite challenges. Another tip, prepare for the video interviews and assessments. We have touched upon this. Let's get used to recording videos of yourself and timing yourself and preparing to speak on the spot. Prepare for video interviews by practicing in front of the camera. Use bullet points, not scripts. Have a general idea of what type of things you're going to talk about, and keep your answers structured. At assessment centres, focus on fairness, ethical reasoning, teamwork, clarity. I mean, the CPS values objectivity and integrity above all, but have a generalized idea of what you're going to talk about, so you're not panicking under time pressure when you're put on the spot. I was just going to pause that there. What we'll do now is I think I'm going to show you some of my notes that I made during my application. So I'm just going to show you that now. These are some of the notes that I had before I went into my interview. And it's not to say that they're going to be correct or work for you, but it's just a starting point, really, just to look at how to tackle the interviews. And as I said, again, it's all bullet points. So you can't have a script going into this. You just need to have trigger points to discuss different points and elaborate, so that when you are put on the spot, as I said earlier, you don't stumble or you don't struggle to think of what to say. It's just right at the back of your mind. So I just broke this down into different areas. So what does the CPS do? That's very important. Knowing what they do, what the role is, and then also why you're joining the CPS. So similar to, we looked at the gateway and copied and pasting applications for the different private chambers. Similarly, you need to know what the CPS do and why they'd pick you over anyone else. Why are you motivated to joining the CPS? So I'll put a few ideas down: wanting to become a prosecutor, developing my advocacy, specializing in criminal law. Also knowing what behaviors they're looking for and how that fits in with what they're asking for and how you've got those behaviors. And I've put a few things here: so honesty, conferencing, attention to detail. And why specifically the CPS as a legal trainee? So understanding the different pupillage format. And then I've put some examples here. So the training, the employed bar, the benefits, so the rewards schemes. Also that it's quite a diverse role, and you can actually eventually specialize in different areas. So the scope to develop your career as well. And why are you a good fit? What characteristics and skills match what they're looking for? So you can put that down here. And why you want to work in the profession. So this is just about your different skill sets and your passion for the role. And then this may have changed now for future years, but again, we touched upon the STAR method. And at the time, I believe this has changed actually. We had some civil service behaviours that I looked at the website, and I listed all of the different subcategories for each of the behaviours and linked it with us to a specific experience that I had as a healthcare professional prior to my legal training. And often in the physical video stage, the panel interview, they'll ask you a question, and based on this question, you'll immediately know what behavior they're discussing here. So they ask questions on the different behaviors. So whether that's leadership, so they may ask a question here. If we go to leadership, and they might say something about, give us an example of when you've dealt with difficult conversations, and straight away you'll know, oh, they're asking about leadership here, and these are the skills that they want. And then I've also had some notes here that the example I'm going to bring is that I managed a small team when I was a healthcare professional. So that's already memorized in the back of my mind. So that trigger word of difficult conversations prompted me to discuss all of the civil service behaviors of leadership. And then I straight away remembered an example that encompasses all of these skills that they're looking for. And it's the ability to know what behaviors they're requiring for a role with the CPS and what examples you can bring. But remember the STAR method, not just what you've done, how it encompasses these behaviors and what you've learned from the actual experience. So that's, there's a number of different behaviors there. And just an example, so for the essay, they gave me automated vehicles to look at a week before. I believe it was a week, I might be wrong on this, so don't quote me. The law around automated vehicles. So I spent a good week or so detailed research looking at automated vehicles in the law. And then I had some notes, again, bullet points. You can't write an essay beforehand, but you need to have bullet points of all the key research that you've undertaken. And then once the question's revealed on the day, then you'll straight away know what to write and to present. So hopefully that was just a brief look at this. So the key thing here is the early stages of the interview and the initial video interview, where you get a question within a certain period of time and you've got to deliver your answer on the video. This is the first video. This is what they're looking for. So why do you want to join, your motivation, your behaviors. So hopefully that was a bit of an insight into that. And what would you expect once you actually secured the role? So it's important to know this before you apply, because this could be prompted or put to you during the interviews. So as a CPS trainee, you'll rotate through a number of different departments potentially. So it's not just the court work. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in the magistrates and the Crown Court, but you'll rotate through things like casework, shadowing experienced prosecutors, handling supervised hearings, learning how to review evidence and advice on charges, things like this. You'll get structured mentoring and regular feedback. It's one of the most supportive environments to learn criminal advocacy. It's not just the court-based role, so you're going to have to bring some of the drafting skills, legal research, and a bit of a mix. So hopefully that was a useful guide into the pupillage application process. I mean, it was a fairly long video, but nowhere near like spoon-fed as to how you're going to tackle your application if you are fortunate to apply for pupillage. It's just a snapshot and it's just a bit of a taster, a bit of an insight. It may not work for you. Some of the ideas I had in securing an offer for pupillage. So hopefully it does prompt some further research for yourself. But my final advice is start early. Reflect deeply on your motivations, build experiences that genuinely align with either prosecution or chambers work. Whether you choose the private chambers route or the CPS route, preparation and authenticity are everything. So just think about where your strengths lie, what you're passionate about, and then look through all of the chambers adverts and listings and see what resonates with you. But hopefully you did find this useful. If you did find that useful, then certainly hit subscribe. It does help grow the channel, and hopefully it does help support other people who are either in legal training or looking to become a lawyer in the future. If you did have any questions, do drop a comment with the questions below. Let me know which process you want a deeper breakdown or any other further episodes. But hopefully that was useful, and hope to see you on the next episode, and it's goodbye for now. Take care.